On November 14, 1957, in a small estate sale in Brattleboro, Vermont, Margaret Holloway purchased an antique porcelain doll for $3. The doll was beautiful. Delicate. Its painted blue eyes seemed to follow movement with an unsettling awareness. Its cracked porcelain face bore the faintest suggestion of a smile. The estate belonged to the Whitmore family, and the sale was handled by their only surviving relative, an elderly woman who refused to enter the room where the doll had been kept. When Margaret asked why, the woman simply whispered, "It takes them all, eventually." Margaret laughed. She shouldn't have. Within 60 days, Margaret Holloway would be dead. Her daughter institutionalized. And the cursed doll would begin its journey through 7 families, leaving behind a trail of madness, death, and unexplained horror that continues to this day. Margaret Holloway brought the doll home to her farmhouse on rural Route 7, just outside Brattleboro. She placed it on the mantelpiece in her daughter's bedroom. 7-year-old Caroline was delighted. That first night, Margaret heard singing. A child's voice, high and sweet, coming from Caroline's room at 3:47 a.m. When she opened the door, Caroline was asleep. The doll sat on the mantelpiece, exactly where it had been placed. But its head had turned. It was now facing the bed. Margaret told herself she had remembered wrong. She hadn't. 3 nights later, Caroline began speaking to the doll. Long conversations in the dark. Margaret would stand outside the bedroom door and listen to her daughter's voice asking questions, then pausing, as if listening to answers only she could hear. When Margaret asked who she was talking to, Caroline smiled and said, "Annabel tells me things. Secret things. About what's coming." Margaret removed the doll that afternoon, locked it in the cellar. That night, she found it back on the mantelpiece. Caroline was standing in front of it, sleepwalking, her eyes open but unseeing. The doll's porcelain hand, which had been resting in its lap, was now raised, pointing directly at Margaret. 23 days after purchasing the cursed doll, Margaret Holloway died in her sleep. The official cause was listed as heart failure. She was 32 years old with no prior health issues. Caroline was found 3 days later, catatonic, sitting on the floor holding the doll and whispering the same phrase over and over, "Annabel says it's time. Annabel says it's time." She never spoke another coherent sentence. The doll was sold at auction to settle the estate. Between 1958 and 1973, the cursed doll changed hands 5 more times. Each transaction seemed innocent. An antique dealer in New Hampshire. A collector in Massachusetts. A young couple in Connecticut. A widow in Rhode Island. A professor in Maine. Each believed they had found a valuable antique, a beautiful addition to their home. Each learned the truth too late. The pattern was always the same. It started with sounds. Footsteps in empty rooms. Singing at night. The soft creak of porcelain joints moving when no one was watching. Then came the dreams. Every owner reported the same nightmare, a little girl in Victorian clothing, standing at the foot of their bed, whispering in a language they couldn't understand but somehow knew was a warning. They would wake to find the doll had moved. A different room. A different position. Always closer than before. Then the accidents began. The antique dealer, Robert Chen, fell down his stairs. He survived, but swore something had pushed him. His wife left him 2 weeks later, claiming she couldn't stay in the house another night. The young couple in Connecticut, David and Susan Morrison, lost their infant son to SIDS. 3 months later, Susan drove her car into a lake. David found the cursed doll in the back seat of the recovered vehicle, though he had sold it weeks earlier. The widow in Rhode Island, Eleanor Vance, simply disappeared. Her home was found abandoned, food still on the table, doors unlocked. The doll sat in the center of her bed, surrounded by newspaper clippings Eleanor had collected, all detailing the previous owners and their tragedies. She had been researching the pattern. Trying to understand. The professor in Maine burned his house down trying to destroy the doll. It survived without a single crack. He didn't. In 1974, the cursed doll was purchased by James and Patricia Whitaker of Salem, Massachusetts. They were skeptical people. Educated. James was a psychiatrist, Patricia, a high school teacher. When they began experiencing the phenomena, they decided to document it. To study it. To prove there was a rational explanation. They kept detailed journals, took photographs, recorded audio. The evidence they gathered should have convinced them to run. Instead, it fascinated them. The photographs showed the doll in different positions, sometimes multiple times in a single day, though it was never touched. The audio recordings captured whispers, a child's laughter, and something else. A sound like breathing, wet and labored, coming from the doll itself. Patricia's journal entries became increasingly disturbed. April 3, 1974, the doll was in our bedroom this morning. Neither of us moved it. James suggests sleepwalking, but we would have noticed. May 17, 1974, I saw her. Not the doll. The girl. Standing in the hallway. She smiled at me. Her teeth were black. June 22, 1974, James has started talking to it. He doesn't realize he's doing it. I hear him at night, having conversations, arguing with it. When I ask him about it, he has no memory. The doll knows things. It told him about my mother's death before it happened. July 8, 1974, we can't give it away. We've tried. It comes back. We can't destroy it. We can't escape it. James says we were chosen. I think he's right. I think we were chosen the moment we saw it. I think we were always meant to have it. I think Annabel has been waiting for us. The final entry was dated July 15, 1974, it's not a doll. It was never a doll. Tonight, I finally understand what it wants. What it's always wanted. James is already gone. I can see it in his eyes. Tomorrow, I'll be gone too. And then Annabel will need someone new. The Whitaker house remained untouched for 6 weeks before relatives entered. They found James and Patricia in the living room, sitting in chairs facing each other, both dead from apparent self-inflicted wounds. Between them, on a small table, sat the cursed doll. Its head turned to face the door as police entered. 3 officers witnessed this. All 3 requested transfers to different departments within a month. The evidence collected from the Whitaker home was extensive. Journals, photographs, audio recordings. All of it detailed an escalating haunting, a presence that had attached itself to the doll, or perhaps the presence was the doll itself. Patricia's research went deeper than the previous owners. She had traced the cursed doll's origins. The porcelain doll was manufactured in Germany in 1898, part of a limited collection created by a doll maker named Heinrich Strand. Heinrich had one daughter, Annabel, who died at age 8 from scarlet fever. According to Patricia's notes, Heinrich became obsessed with preserving his daughter's memory. He created a single doll in her exact likeness, using techniques that were considered revolutionary and disturbing. Some reports suggested he mixed his daughter's ashes into the porcelain. Others claimed he incorporated strands of her hair, fragments of her bones. After the doll was completed, Heinrich's behavior changed. He spoke to the doll as if it were his living daughter. He set a place for it at meals. He tucked it into bed at night. His servants reported hearing 2 voices in his workshop, one belonging to Heinrich, the other to a little girl, though Annabel had been dead for 3 years. Heinrich Strand died in his workshop in 1901, his body discovered slumped over his work table, the doll cradled in his arms. The cause of death was never determined. His workshop was sealed. The doll disappeared into private collections, surfacing occasionally at estate sales and auctions, always leaving destruction in its wake. After the Whitaker deaths, the cursed doll was seized as evidence and stored in a police warehouse in Salem. It remained there for 11 years, locked in a box in a climate-controlled evidence room. Officers avoided the section where it was stored. Some reported feeling watched. Others heard singing late at night when they worked overtime shifts. One officer opened the box to verify its contents. He found the doll sitting upright, its eyes open, though it had been placed lying down. He resealed the box and requested early retirement the following week. In 1985, the evidence was scheduled for destruction. The case was closed. The families were dead. There was no reason to keep it. But before the cursed doll could be incinerated, it was stolen. The evidence room was locked. No signs of forced entry. The security cameras showed nothing. The box simply appeared empty during a routine check. For 3 years, the doll's whereabouts were unknown. Then the letters began. Letters sent to the Salem Police Department, to paranormal researchers, to journalists who had covered the Whitaker case. All the letters said the same thing: Annabel is home. Annabel is happy. Annabel is waiting. The letters were traced to a residential address in Arkham, Massachusetts. 1847, Pickman Street. When police arrived, they found the house abandoned. Furniture covered in dust. No signs of recent habitation. In the center of the living room, arranged in a perfect circle, were 7 chairs. On each chair sat a photograph. The 7 families. All the people who had owned the doll. In the center of the circle, on a small pedestal, sat the cursed doll. Its painted eyes seemed to glimmer in the dim light. Its cracked smile seemed whiter than before. And clutched in its porcelain hand was an 8th photograph. The frame was empty. Waiting. The cursed doll was removed from the Arkham house and turned over to the Warren Occult Museum, where it remains today, locked in a sealed glass case blessed by 3 priests. The museum warns visitors not to touch the glass. Not to speak to it. Not to look directly into its eyes for too long. Because Annabel is still listening. Still waiting. And that 8th photograph frame was never found. Security footage from the museum, reviewed just last week, shows something that can't be explained. In the middle of the night, when the building is empty and locked, the doll's head turns. Slowly. Deliberately. Toward the camera. As if it knows it's being watched. As if it's watching back. And if you listen very carefully to the audio, beneath the hum of the ventilation system, you can hear it. A child's voice. Singing. Always singing. The question isn't whether the cursed doll is still active. The question is, whose photograph will fill that empty frame?